God bless America. Hello, everybody. I am the Talk Radio Protege. This is the Protege program. Thank you so much for joining me on this fine Thursday. I'm looking forward to the weekend. I hope that you all are as well. And today I want to talk about a question that I have for you, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this. Should the GOP, the Republican Party, revive the character debate? We kind of put the character debate on hold for 2016. Well, a little bit we did. You know, people were saying that Hillary was a bad person. People were saying that Trump was a bad person. And so we all kind of just agreed, all right, this is not going to be decided over who is the better person, because both of these people are, by many measures, immoral people. So let's just vote on policy. Okay, and we kind of did that. And in large part, the Republicans have really not made the character argument in a long time. You know, the earliest we could have made that you could say, or the most recently you could say we've made the character argument, was in 2012 when Mitt Romney was absolutely obliterated by accusations of really innocuous things that most people don't think of as immoral or moral. But Ben Shapiro wrote a column for the Weekly Standard called "How Conservatives Can Win Back Young Americans." And one of the paragraphs of this column got me to asking this question: should the GOP revive the character debate? And I want to go to that paragraph so that I can show you what this, or where this question comes from. This is it. So Ben writes all this stuff, and I would highly encourage you to go read this column. I thought it was a great read. I thought a lot of great points were made. And I think that this also reminded me of something that happened on the Democrat side of the aisle during the 2016 campaign. And I'll talk about it when we get there. Now, in full disclosure, before we get into this, Ben Shapiro is, I think by his own description, a never-Trumper. And I would assume that he believes himself to be a young conservative. So let's go through this. It's really two paragraphs. There are a few reasons for this gap. First, older conservatives already fought the character battle over Bill Clinton. They carry the scars for that ordeal. They remember arguing that Bill Clinton was unfit for office based on his treatment of women and perjury, and they remember losing that argument. They skip on down. Older conservatives remember Mitt Romney, the cleanest candidate for high office in modern American history, being destroyed by the media over pure nonsense. Older conservatives weren't looking for character in 2016. They were looking for a hammer. And I'm sure that you all remember that. Now, the next paragraph. Young conservatives, however, still feel that the battle over character is unfolding, which it is among young Americans. Young Americans are still trying to decipher which party best reflects their moral values. Trump presents a serious problem for young conservatives trying to make the character argument in favor of the Republican Party. Young conservatives didn't see the battle of 2016 as a battle in which character had already been lost. They saw it as presenting a question about their own character. Were they willing to stand enthusiastically behind a man they personally abhorred? The answer, by and large, was no. At least it was for the never-Trumpers like Ben Shapiro and probably a lot of young conservatives. Young conservatives want to be able to tell their friends, all future voters by the way, that they didn't stand by silently when a candidate of their party said he could grab women by the private parts. Now, we're going to get into some of the other things that I think about this, but think about the negative effect that having Bill attached to her had on Hillary's campaign. Some of you might remember, it was not widely reported, but you might remember that there were millennial women reporters that were pressuring Bill Clinton about his past because of the sexual impropriety that was in it. So maybe even the liberals don't see the character debate as having been fought. And, you know, the conservatives have lost in recent memory. The conservatives always lose the character debate. You know, Barack Obama was seen as the nicest guy on the planet in 2008. By the time 2012 rolled around, the character of Mitt Romney had to be obliterated because Obama wasn't still the nicest guy on the planet. You know, Bill Clinton, you know, his character obviously survived the impeachment proceedings in that time, and Republicans lost the subsequent elections. Young conservatives simply reject the presupposition that older conservatives have that the character debate has been fought and conservatives always lose. Now, I want to comment on these next couple of paragraphs, the next couple of points that Ben makes. First of all, Ben observes that older conservatives saw the 2016 election as a cataclysmic event. And if you listen to the current roster of talk radio hosts, you could call these folks the dinosaur media. It's, you know, Mike Savage, Mark Levin, Herman Cain, Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity. These guys were all saying that we could not allow Hillary Clinton to become president, that it would have been a catastrophe if Hillary was president. And I tend to think that it would have been very, very bad for the country for Hillary to become president. I think it would have been the most corrupt presidency in the history of the country, even more so than Barack Obama's. Barack had his share of corruption issues, but Hillary would have been worse, and that would have been terrible for the country. You can also look back on the past year and see what we wouldn't have got had Hillary been elected. We wouldn't have got tax cuts. We wouldn't have got Neil Gorsuch. I highly doubt that the Republicans would have continued to not confirm a Supreme Court nominee for a Democrat president had Hillary Clinton been elected. Deregulation, massive deregulation has happened under President Trump. Just recently, North Korea is developing for the better. We've pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal. All these great things that we've gotten from a Trump presidency that we wouldn't have gotten from a Hillary presidency. Now, as Ben Shapiro observes, younger conservatives were far more sanguine about 2016. I assume that means they didn't think that it was as much a catastrophe. In their view, Hillary would have certainly been a rotten president, but would she bar the door to all future conservative victories? Younger conservatives thought such an outcome unlikely. After all, Republicans were likely to retain control of the House and Senate. Furthermore, Hillary was widely disliked, burdened by scandal, and unpopular, even with her own base. Older conservatives, yada, yada, yada. I think we've covered it at this point. Now, I agree with that. I don't think that the election of Hillary Clinton would have been the end of the Republican Party. It would have been very bad. It wouldn't have been the end. And in hindsight, looking back and seeing the things that we are getting with Trump, I think that it is worth it, what we have gained from President Trump, to have not had to suffer through 4 years of President Hillary. And after just the first 2 years of Obama, all of the conservatives, you know, at that point, the young conservatives weren't even a factor. But after 2 years, conservatism thought that Obama was done. He was going to be a one-term president. He was going to be out of there. And then he was reelected. So who's to say that if Hillary had gotten in, that she wouldn't have been guaranteed 4 more years? You know, it's impossible to know for sure, but I think that what we're getting is worth not having Hillary for president. Now, the next paragraph is going to get into something that I've been kind of avoiding trying to say because it's being gotten into now. Because young conservatives and old conservatives disagreed about the consequences of 2016, they also disagreed about the level of risk to the Republican Party. Thanks to the crisis mentality of many older Americans, the brain damage done by Trump became of secondary concern. Thanks to the lack of crisis mentality among younger conservatives, the brand damage done by Trump became a crucial problem. Young conservatives couldn't understand how so many old conservatives were willing to dispose of key planks of the Republican platform to back Trump, or why so many older conservatives who had preached to them about personal values were suddenly gushing over a man who bragged about sleeping with other men's wives. Now, I want to ask, what planks of the Republican platform were sacrificed in order to back Trump? And we can think of a few things. You know, Trump is a protectionist. Trump is not a free market absolutist. He believes that there are things that can be done and should be done to protect American businesses. And I might do a video on this later. I was having a discussion with someone last weekend about protectionism, and we had some interesting discussion and came to some interesting conclusions about that. And I might share that with you at some other time. Let me know in the comments if you want to hear about that. So Trump is not a free market absolutist. What's something else that was abandoned to support Trump? You know, Trump is very socially liberal. Now, he's not socially liberal for the reason that the progressives are socially liberal. And Ben addresses that in this column, and I agree. The current or younger conservatives are much more socially liberal than older conservatives are. And the reason is, you leave me alone and I'll leave you alone. Therefore, I'm a social liberal. Progressives are socially liberal because they want to push an agenda of destroying and breaking down America so that they can install, you know, even more quote unquote progressive left-wing economic controls. So that was something that was sacrificed to support Trump, and that's why I think some of the younger generation of voters came to back Trump. Ben seems to think that nobody young voted for Trump. I think that some of the young conservatives probably, in large part, voted for Trump because they were able to get on board with the social platform while maintaining that the fiscal and national platforms were agreeable enough. Furthermore, I want to ask, what is the risk to the brand of republicanism, of the Republican Party, when the Republican Party categorically rejected Donald Trump? You know, there were some people that were public personalities, elected officials, and the like, that embraced candidate Trump. But by and large, the Republican Party rejected him. So where is the brand damage going to come from, since he's being rejected by all these Republicans? Certainly, being a Republican president is going to be something that is damaging to many of the old guard conservative values and the conservative values that are being embraced by younger Republicans. I can see the idea that some of the things that Trump does are going to hurt Republicans. You know, I think that is part of the reason why candidates that are calling themselves Trumpier than Trump are losing. Because while I think that conservatives, and if Ben is right, if young conservatives hate Trump and don't want Trump to be president, they want somebody better than Trump to be president, then it would stand to reason that if they don't have to elect another Trump, they're not going to. it stands to reason that these conservative voters would look at an election like a Pennsylvania House seat and say, this is not as important of a position as the president. We don't have to have another Trump in this seat. We don't have to elect Trump to a House seat. The presidential election was so important that we had to elect Trump, but these House seats are not that important. By the same token, the Alabama and West Virginia Senate seats. Alabama stung a little bit because it was a general election. It was for the marbles. It was for the actual seat. It wasn't just a primary. So it stung a little bit to see Roy Moore lose, to see a Republican lose. But I can imagine the rationale being, we don't have to elect a guy like Trump over a Senate seat. We're not losing the Senate by losing this seat, so we don't have to elect this guy. By the same token, West Virginia was a primary, so it was even less of a big deal. Don Blankenship was the Trump guy, the Trumpier than Trump guy in the West Virginia race. And voters obviously didn't want another Trump, quote unquote, for just a Senate seat, much less just a Senate primary. So, again, I encourage you to go and read this piece by Shapiro. I really enjoyed it, thought it was great. I just had a few minor issues that I wanted to pick with it, and some other things that I wanted to talk about and expound upon from yesterday's video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you want to see more content like it, hit subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. Thank you so much for watching. Come back and join us tomorrow for another report. Until then, good night and God bless.